Unit 10, page 122.
This is really a magic era for software. We can use computers now to simulate so many different things.
So every person has a DNA sequence that's 3 billion letters long. That's a really long sequence, and in order for me to study it, I can't do it by hand. I need to use computer programming in order to go through this code that's 3 billion letters long in order to figure out how your DNA code is associated with disease.
My interests are actually right at the interface between biology and computer science. There's a huge database that contains all known organisms, so humans, monkeys, mice, viruses, bacteria.
Usually now, if a doctor is worried about you having an infection, based on your age and where your symptoms are, if it's in your ear or your heart or your brain, they try to make a best guess as to what type of infection you have. And then they'll send off tests specific for those bugs. So if they think you have strep throat, they send off the strep test. But the type of testing we do, since we can essentially test for any type of infection with a single test, so we don't have to have a bias going into the testing saying we think it's X, Y, or Z. We just say, let's see what's in there.
A Cottage Grove teenager now says he's taking life one day at a time after being critically ill from a mysterious illness.
News 3's Mary Jola has his story and details into new DNA sequencing that helps solve a medical mystery.
It's spring, and like any other teenager, Joshua Osborne can't be stuck indoors.
I feel wonderful today. It's 80 degrees.
It's a welcome change from last summer here in the hospital and in a coma. His symptoms began last April with fevers and headaches, and he only got worse.
And he needed to be hospitalized.
Josh may not remember the hospital stay, but his dad Clark does.
They tested for everything they knew. They tested for viruses and bacterias, and ultimately he had a brain scan and 2 or 3 spinal taps.
Yeah, but he had like all these crazy tubes. Like I remember that weekend when they were doing it, it was so intense. It was like he was gonna die like that week. We got Josh's samples from his doctor because his doctor was giving up. They had no idea. They sunk millions of dollars into this kid. They've used, hundreds of tests, hundreds, right? Sent to the CDC, sent it to multiple labs, and they couldn't get an answer back. And so much money, right? And so they turned to us and they were like, we need to know what it is.
So this is where we have the gene sequencers. We got a small amount of Josh's cerebrospinal fluid, which is the fluid that bathes the brain. With very powerful computer algorithms, we took out all the human sequences that were present in the data and then searched all the non-human sequences that we got against a giant database that contains gene sequences of all known organisms. And very quickly we saw that the sequences were all for a particular organism that Josh likely contracted when he visited Puerto Rico about 9 months before. And fortunately, that organism, it's a bacterium, and there's a very straightforward treatment for it, penicillin.
The doctor gave him the drugs, that same day, and he was fine like 24 hours later.
Well, I can tell you that I'm happy to be alive, and that I have dreams, and I'm looking forward to accomplishing them.